Hi, this is Amber from Milo's Creations, and today I'm going to teach you how to do bead crochet. So there are a number of things that you need when you're doing bead crochet. Obviously you need beads. These are size 11 Tohos. They're very, very tiny. You can get them right from Michael's. They're $3 or $2.99, at least they are here, for 10 grams. I mostly get them from a place called Aura Crystals on eBay, and I ordered from these people the last time, and they do like a bulk discount, and you can also find them on eBay. They come in 15 gram packs, and it's about $2, give or take, depending on what color you get. Most of you have probably seen a crochet hook like this before. And for comparison, you can see the size of the beads. I know that the work always looks bigger in pictures, or at least that's what I found, and it's actually really tiny work. You need some kind of thread. I personally like the brand ThreadArt. You can get it at ThreadArt.com, or it's also available on Amazon. It's Perle cotton thread number 8. I prefer this over the DMC brand because of the tube that it comes on. You can wrap your beaded work around the tube, and then you can secure it with clothespins so it doesn't come off. You can also use like embroidery thread, or maybe like nylon or polyester thread or something like that. I just like the way that the Perle cotton thread feels. It's what I learned to use, and it's just kind of what I stuck with. You need some way to finish your crochet. This is some findings that you can use, some like cord ends, or you can use a focal bead on each end and then put your clasp on. You need beading needles, which, if you don't know, is different from regular needles. They open up throughout the whole length in the center, and they're a lot thinner than a regular needle. If you try to use a regular needle, it's probably not going to fit in a bead as small as mine. I wouldn't suggest starting with this size bead. I would probably use like a pony bead to start with, and just regular yarn, and a regular crochet hook, probably like a size E or F, depending on how you crochet. Then I might go to like a size 6 bead, and I'd work my way down if you want to continue using smaller beads. Here are some of my finished projects. Now, I found with the larger beads, sometimes they don't lay as nice as these really tiny beads, so this may be, you might want this to be your goal, to be able to work with these beads, because I just think that they look better. I've made other projects in the past with a size 8 bead, and sometimes these beads, like the individual bead, will turn, and there's not much that you can do about it. I've had ones that I've pulled the work out 3 or 4 times and it'll still do that, and I just had to leave it there. So I like these a lot better. You need scissors and your crochet hook. Here's some cord ends that I recently found. These are magnetic, and they also twist lock, and I got these on eBay, and I've also seen them on Beadaholique.com. And you also may need like reading glasses to use as magnifying glasses if it's hard for you to see something that's tiny. This is what the work looks like when you're finished with it, but before you've put the ends on. And you can see it is a tube, and it is crocheted. And you also might need needle nose pliers, because sometimes if you make a stringing error, like you have too many beads on there, like you put 2 instead of 1, instead of cutting your string and trying to do it that way, it's sometimes just easier to crunch a bead that's in your way. Okay. So I've strung a little bit of beads here. This is maybe 6 or 8 inches. This would do about 1 inch of a 7-inch bracelet. To know how many beads you need to string, you do the length of whatever you're doing. Usually a bracelet is about 7 inches, necklace is 16 to 18 inches for a short one. You do the number of beads around. So in this case we are doing 7 beads around times the length. So if I were making this into a bracelet, I would do 7 times 7, which is 49. So I would have to string 49 inches of beads. And that's pretty universal. It's not just for size 11 beads. It's the same way for like a size 8 or a size 6 or even a pony bead. I always string a few inches extra just in case, but I usually end up taking them back off and putting them back away. So you start, when you string, you want to string opposite of what you want your pattern to be. Since I wanted to string it in the color of the rainbow, I had to start in an opposite order with purple, indigo, blue, green. You got it. You want to leave about maybe 6 inches or so to sew into your work to make the clasp hold on really tight. So you start by making a slip stitch and insert your hook. And you push the first bead up, yarn over, and I think I yarn over backwards from how most people do. It's just how I learned. I was taught at a really young age by a family friend, and so I never got like any classes or anything. Most people yarn over like that. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. So yarn over and pull it through. You want to keep your first round a little loose. If you don't, then it's going to mess up your work when you go to do more rows. Then that end will be a little caved in because you didn't keep it loose enough. Okay, so I'm ready to start the second round, so you need to flip your work, and you're going to insert the hook. You can see where the slip stitching is on this side, and then the beads are on this side. You're going to insert the hook between the slip stitch and the bead. It doesn't matter what side of the hook you push the bead to. My personal preference is to push it to the front. Some people like to push it to the back. It doesn't matter, but you have to be consistent throughout your work. So if you decide to push it to the front, then you always have to push it to the front. You can push your next bead up, which if you do it in the pattern I did or something similar, your bead colors should line up. So the red bead that I pushed up will line up with the red bead that we put the hook under. If it does not, then you are off a bead and you need to fix that before you continue. And then you want to pull your hook under the stitch that has the red bead on it from the previous row and through the loop on the hook. Okay, so you put the hook between the slip stitch. You can see right there is the slip stitch and the bead, and you push your bead whatever direction you choose. Push your next bead up. The colors should line up. Yarn over and pull it through both loops on the hook. Put the hook between the slip stitch and the bead. Push your bead whatever direction you want. Push your next bead up. The colors do line up. Yarn over and pull it through. And that is the only stitch you do through the whole process. So I'm going to do some stitches and then I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, so I'm just now starting the third round, and to me this is the hardest round. not when you're working in a rope pattern like this, but when you're doing an actual pattern like a flower or like hearts or something like that, when the colors don't necessarily line up with the color beneath them. The first time you go around is easy because there's only like one option it could be that it lines up with, but now that you have two beads here, especially when you're working with more beads, like if you're working with something that's got maybe 12 or 15 beads in it, it can get a bit confusing. It always kind of looks like a cluster at this point. It doesn't really look like anything. Don't think that you've done something wrong. You probably haven't. Keep going, give it till at least row 4 or 5 and see if it's starting to look right, because you may end up pulling your work out and you didn't actually need to. And you're doing the same thing, putting your hook between the slip stitch and the bead and pushing your bead the same direction you have been pushing it, and pulling the hook through both loops. And you're going to do that all the way to the end of the project. Okay, now that I've worked a few rounds, let's see, I'm working on my 5th round, you can see how it's really starting to lay down nicely. But the row that you just did is always going to stick up. So give me just a minute, I'll work a few more rows and then I will show you how to make them lay down. So now I've done a few rows or rounds. Obviously you wouldn't normally end it this short, but for the tutorial I'm going to end it this short. So you will, whenever you're ready to stop and you need to turn these beads so that they face the same direction as the rest of the beads, you put your hook under the next bead and you yarn over, and pull it through both, and that makes the bead lay down. So it's the same thing that you've been doing, you just don't do it with beads. Here's what a completed project looks like before you put the bead caps on it, or before you finish it, however you're going to finish it. You can see when you look at it from above, it definitely is a spiral. And it does have a center, it is crocheted. The more beads that you do around, the larger this hole in the center is going to be. And sometimes it will cause your work to collapse in a certain place. To avoid that, you can maybe run yarn down the center. My husband is an electrician, and when he pulls the plastic casings off of wire that he's stripping to turn in for copper, I use those down the center of this. So pretty much anything that would fit nice and snug, you could put down the center to keep the work from getting a weird crease in it, because sometimes it does. To sew the cord ends on, get your beading needle. Now you could do this with a regular needle. I'm just used to doing it with the beading needle because it's usually the only needle I have handy. You would pick your bead cap. The reason this one is unfinished is because I don't currently have any bead caps that will fit it. and you run it down onto the top. Now this one is way too big for this. Like I said, I don't have any that fit it right now. And then you would put your clasp on. I buy mine from Beadaholique.com. They're a great website. Check them out. They have a ton of beading supplies. And then you would take and run your needle. So you want to make sure that your needle is not going through a bead, that it's actually going between the beads. And then you would pull it tight. I'm not going to pull it tight because this is not the correct end cap for this. And you want to continue to weave this back and forth maybe 1 or 2 times through here between the beads, like so. This is when those needle nose pliers can come in handy for pulling the work, because this needle's getting hard to pull through here. And then you would on your next pass through, you would push the needle back up. So you would go between, not directly in the bead that you just came out of, because sometimes the stitch will pull out, but between a bead like right next to it. You want to force it to come, and it can be difficult. This takes the longest time in my opinion, is finishing the work. You want to force it back up through the center, and then also, you know, it would go through the bead cap. And I do at least 2 or 3 passes through this. I guess it would help if I held it in front of the camera. I do at least 2 or 3 passes through here to make it secure. You can also use like a jump ring or something. That's what I did for these. You can see I secured it with a jump ring. So I just stitched the jump ring first to this, and then I opened the jump ring and I put the clasp on and then closed it. It looks a little better to do it this way, but personally I think it's stronger if you just stitch it directly to the project. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, comments, just leave it below and I will try to help you out.